My name is Moussa Ibrahim. Most of you know me by now. I've been around. Basically, this is just a brief statement to explain what you have been seeing and what you are about to see in the country from our point of view. The idea is, here in Libya, we feel that this is a very crucial moment in history for our people, for our 6 million people, and for the whole region. And we think it's very important to ask people to stand and bear witness to what they are seeing every day, because we don't want people in the future to claim that they were ignorant or did not see what was happening. Whether people are journalists, politicians, intellectuals, activists, or ordinary people, everyone has a responsibility when the risk to the lives of hundreds of thousands of people is real and imminent. Then everyone has a moral responsibility to act. For you as journalists, in addition to the moral responsibility, we believe you have a professional one. I'm sure you agree with me. What is happening here in Libya is very different to what the media and the UN are alleging. There are simply no massacres, no bombardments of cities, no reckless violence against civilians. I will repeat that again because I do believe I'm saying this as my own statement and what people in Libya, most of them, will tell you. There are no massacres, no bombardments of cities, no reckless violence against civilians. We have here in Libya, at this very moment, more than 130 foreign correspondents touring Libyan cities. They could not see any evidence of bombardments of cities or massacres. So what's the story? In short, we believe the imperialist powers of the West want the Libyan oil. Here it is again, the magical word. I'm sure as journalists you've heard it many times before and you've seen it in action before. Oil. And would not mind these Western powers a change in the Libyan government, but oil is the main target. The Islamic or Islamist militants want Libya as their Mediterranean Somalia or Afghanistan, to complete their crescent of terror that stretches from Mauritania to Niger through Senegal and Mali and other sub-Saharan African countries. Libya is the only gap in this crescent, and once they have it, they will complete their crescent of terror. The Islamist militants have already declared Islamic Emirates in the cities of Darna and Beidha in the east, with the news about a third emirate in the city of Zawiyah. But how they are working together, the Islamist militants and the West? To start with, genuine Libyan peaceful protesters came out on the streets in small numbers, 1,000 here, 2,000 there, to demand legitimate and much needed political improvements, such as a written constitution, freedom of expression, and so on, and better services, like better salaries, better housing for the youth. The West and the Islamic militants are not involved yet. The Islamic militants related to Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, hundreds of them were released by the Libyan government during the last year or so, including 120 leaders of Al-Qaeda, released on the very 17th of February 2011, after a long dialogue with Saif al-Islam Muammar al-Gaddafi. These Islamist militant leaders hijacked these peaceful protests using their highly trained personnel and individuals. They immediately moved to attack and acquire weapons from police stations, army camps, and munition depots. They then started to attack army barricades and checkpoints around and inside cities. The peaceful demand for change was turned into a violent armed rebellion, as you saw yesterday with your own eyes. The fights between the security forces and the armed individuals caused the deaths of hundreds of people. We never denied that hundreds of people were killed in the last few days. But those people were from both sides. And as a result of armed individuals attacking police stations and army barricades, there were no massacres or bombardments of civilians. The violence erupted because violent protesters hijacked the peaceful movement, and the army with the security forces were not trained to deal with such dramatic turn of events. We, 6 million of ordinary Libyan citizens in all parts of the country, find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, the Islamists love chaos because they thrive on disorder and want to have their Mediterranean Afghanistan and Libya half an hour away from Europe. This is like paradise to them. On the other hand, the West also wants chaos because it gives them a reason to intervene with a military solution and thus control the oil. Libya, as you know, is one of the richest oil-producing countries in the world. Mind you, it's not the first time Islamic terrorism and the West find a mutual cause to fight. You just have to go back to the 80s and think of the Soviet Union. In both cases, the case of Al-Qaeda and case of the West, hundreds of thousands, and I repeat, hundreds of thousands of Libyans will be killed and destruction everywhere for possibly years to come. The Iraqi example is not a legend. We all lived through it. Of course, some time from now, the West will admit that there were no massacres and no bombardments of cities and may say sorry, but will justify the whole thing by the regime change idea, just like they did in Iraq. Doesn't this remind you of the whole Iraqi scenario? As journalists, you have the duty to report the truth here and now before the blood of thousands of Libyans is shed when NATO bombards our city and Al-Qaeda controls our streets and towns. Thank you very much.